Welcome back. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission today rearraigned a former governor of Benue State, Gabriel Suswam, and a then Commissioner for Finance in his administration, Omadachi Oklobia, on a 3.1 billion naira money laundering charge. Former Governor Suswam, who is now the senator representing Benue Northeast, and his co-defendants pleaded not guilty when the 9 counts were read to them again before Justice Okunabang of the Federal High Court. They were initially arraigned before Justice Ahmed Mohammed, who withdrew from the case in July. Before the arraignment today, Justice Abang had dismissed an objection raised by the defendants against the transfer of the case, asking the judge to return the case file to Justice Mohammed. Justice Abang has adjourned till October 29th for the commencement of trial. We can talk some more now about Nigeria's foreign policy and Nigeria on the foreign scene with Professor Bola Akintarewa, the Director General of Bolitac Center for Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. He joins us from his home in Yaba. Professor, thank you for joining us on the News at 10. Appreciate your being here. Is Nigeria regaining prominence in the Committee of Nations, with President Buhari being the 5th speaker at this year's UN General Assembly?
I do not look at it as if we are gaining any prominence, simply because all other member states of the international community, their presidents, they all address the United Nations. It's a United Nations General Assembly debate to which all member states are required to make, input. Secondly, the mere fact that we have headed presided over the United Nations Security Council is also on rotational basis. They look at the alphabetical order and they rotate. And then when you look at the presidency of the National Assembly, this time we might have made some efforts by lobbying some other states to vote for us. The truth is that the UN system, this principle of rotation applies, across broad. So when it is zoned to Africa and it is the turn of West Africa, then the member states of the region will determine who should represent. That's where we do some lobbying. But basically, it is not because we have done something substantial to gain prominence. The only thing there is simply that, look, it's the turn, at least, to be given that preferential treatment. Yeah. And we have done well by negotiating, convincing people to vote for us.
Professor, well, some have said they don't understand, the direction of Nigeria's foreign policy. Do you understand it?
Well, nobody can understand the foreign policy direction simply because there is no specific focus that anybody can now say he's studying and try to understand. What is emerging is simply that emphasis appears to be placed on Nigerians in diaspora, and efforts are likely to be made to take advantage of the input, the investments of Nigerians in diaspora. Apart from that, Nigeria's foreign policy under President Muhammadu Buhari, at best, has been very reactive. There is no particular direction anybody can point to.
Professor Bola Akintarewa, thank you again for joining us on the News at 10. He's the Director General of Bolitac Center for Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Thank you for joining us from Yaba. We do apologize for the delay there with Professor Akintarewa, and we're glad we had him back on the News at 10. And now to other stories. One of the country's payments technology and card scheme businesses, Verve, is celebrating 10 years of redefining the face of payment landscape in Nigeria. During a media parley at the George Hotel in Ikoyi, the Verve card scheme kicked off activities that will lead up to the anniversary and inform the public on the growth they've made so far.
And this media parley with the company's banking partners, business team, and industry stakeholders is organized to usher in activities that will mark the celebration.
This is how we make a marvel of resilience.
How did it all start? The company's CEO tells the Verve story.
In 2008, following a mandate from the central bank, InterSwitch, working with the banks, started putting together what we know today to be Verve. They designed a card program that will be chip and pin in exactly the same quality and standards as you would find anywhere in the world, and it was introduced into the Nigerian market.
Verve was launched by InterSwitch Group, a leading payment technology and card scheme business in Africa. Today, the card scheme has grown from being just a local brand.
It's time for Verve to go to boarding school. Okay? It's time for Verve to travel out. Okay? And that is what we are doing. It is working. It's working in countries we don't even talk to you about. Today, with the support of you banks, Verve has been accepted in about 20 countries in Africa.
Today, Verve tries to work and tell the world that we are not just about plastics, but we are evolving other forms of payments. So like the wearables and all that, today we're into contactless payments. We have tokens that can be used on cardless ecosystems and all that. So it's really a very interesting journey that I think in the next few years, we're going to be making a lot of positive announcements.
To mark the 10th anniversary, Verve is rolling out offers, promos and discounts to customers and merchants. There's also the Verve Live application introduced to the public. The press launch ends with a fireside session with bank and InterSwitch executives on some topical issues in the e-business space.
Which says, look, you can't charge a customer.
I'll take us into some more business news with Kayode Okikiolu.
You First. First Bank.
Well, thank you, Amarachi, and welcome to Business News. We'll begin with the central bank committing a whopping 22 billion naira initial fund to the establishment of a 40-acre creative industry park, and that will be around the National Theatre in Igomu, Lagos. The CBN Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, announced the plan at a summit on Nigeria's creative industry, which is currently holding in Lagos, with a view to harnessing the country's teeming youth for productive ventures. Mr. Emefiele notes that the pilot phase of the initiative will commence in Lagos and subsequently expand to Kano, Port Harcourt, and Enugu.
We are cognizant of the fact that a growing creative industry will also support the growth of other sectors of our economy, such as logistic firms, financial service companies, construction firms, as well as legal firms. So far, the CBN and the Bankers Committee intend to support this creative venture with 22 billion naira of initial funds. Part of our efforts in the music and movie industry will be to support young entrepreneurs in the development of digital content at the park. Our creative industry financing initiative will also enable the development of distribution of outlets such as cinemas and music platforms, which will help improve the reach of the content developed by our young entrepreneurs.
And as the nation counts down to its 59th independence celebration, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry says that over the last 59 years, the Nigerian economy has transformed from a basically agrarian economy to an economy driven largely by resources from the oil and gas sector. According to the chamber, the paradox that the oil sector accounts for over 50% of the nation's revenue and over 80% of the foreign exchange earnings remains a major failing of the economy, making it vulnerable to global shocks and weak in economic inclusion. The LCCI says that urgent reforms are needed in the oil and gas sector, as well as strategic responses to the looming fiscal viability and solvency crisis at all levels of government.
For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow.
There you have sight and sound from the closing on the Nigerian Stock Exchange by Nigeria's foremost accountant, Mr. Akintola Williams, who recently turned 100 years on August 9th. The elder statesman, who is also the first president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria and Africa's first chartered accountant, commended stockbrokers for their effort in making the equities market what it has become. Pa Akintola Williams is the only surviving signatory to the original Memorandum and Articles of Association of the Nigerian Stock Exchange since its establishment on September the 15th, 1960.
I must congratulate all the members of the Stock Exchange for what they have so far done, for the contributions they have made. Contributions are not easy to come by. And I must say that so long as the exchange exists, all of us who started off the exchange would do our very best to see that the exchange is taken care of.
And so at the NSE, stock market sentiments closed the eve of the National Day and third quarter negative, despite strong sectoral performance recorded across board. Well, let's get the details from Teniola Shoboali.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. After intense fluctuation and volatility within Monday's trading session, the stock market ends the last day of September in the red, starting off the week lower by 0.16%. The 22 billion naira loss in equities capitalization, which comes amid positive performance from the 5 key sectors of the NSE, is mainly attributed to the 4.04% drop in the share price of MTN Nigeria. However, market breadth ended with a slightly positive margin of 18 gainers, led by a 9.89% increase in the share price of chemical and allied products against 17 losers, led by a 9.84% drop from John Holt. The trio of GT Bank, Access and FBN Holdings are lead contributors to over 194.79 million total units of shares traded in nearly 3,000 transactions today. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Teniola Shoboali.
Thank you, Teniola. Meanwhile, it's a positive close for U.S. stock market, but let's find out how other major global markets ended today. Thank you for watching Business News Tonight. I am Kayode Okikiolu. The news at 10 continues with Amarachi.
You first. First Bank.
Thank you, Coyote. Still ahead on the news at 10, World Football Governing Body FIFA orders Cardiff City to pay Nantes £5.3 million for late Emiliano Sala transfer. We'll have more in Sports News Plus around the world in 5. Stay with us.